morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we're back with something very exciting indeed. We have got lots of information about an upcoming black and white focus set for the Pokémon TCG, and this is looking very, very exciting indeed. You see, we're starting to get news of Black Bolt and White Flare. Now, we saw the trademarks for these a while ago, and I told you that Black Bolt had to be Zekrom and White Flare had to be Reshiram. I really don't think there's much of a counter-argument here. Sometimes I come in and tell you, well, it could be this, but we need to hold our horses. I'm usually one that is very, very, very determined in not jumping to conclusions and all of that. But I think, kind of like when we saw the set name Eevee Heroes, just this time, we cannot hold our horses. We can be a little bit jumping to conclusions here. It's blatantly a Reshiram and Zekrom set. By the way, I'm going to be using some Gen 5 card images on the screen. Obviously, these are for illustrative purposes. These are not from the new set. And these have started popping up. We've seen listings here over on Play Asia. And one thing that is very, very important to note here, that I think could be easily missed by a bunch of people, 20 packs in a box. That's a bit weird. Because you see, generally speaking, when you buy a pack of or a box of Japanese Pokemon cards, you get 30 packs. Buy a box of Super Electric Breaker, you get 30 packs. Buy a box of Paradise Dragona, you get 30 packs. Do you know when you got 20 packs? 151. 151 was a set where you got 20 packs. For what it's worth, your end-of-year high-class packs like Terrestrial Festival, for instance, there you do actually get 10 packs per box. They're a whole different thing entirely. But honestly, like genuinely, the fact that there's 20 packs per box, rather than 30 or rather than 10, tells us what kind of set it is. It tells us it is a set very much in the vein of 151, which is to say more cards per pack. And we're talking fancy set here. We're not talking end-of-year high-class pack like Terrestrial Festival, but we're not talking about an ordinary everyday run-of-the-mill set here. We are talking about a fancy set, and that is very, very important. And there have been a bunch of Twitter handles over in Japan like Taibapan, like King Gagaga, like Zabai Pokaka, who have been sharing information about this. And a lot of this information is starting to match up. Firstly, we are seeing a release date all over of the 6th of June, and we're seeing it all over to the point where we can be pretty sure at this stage that the release date is the 6th of June. As always, not 100% confirmed, not guaranteed, but incredibly likely, because when multiple different people are all sharing the same information, that kind of tells you what you need to know. Cool. But here's the other thing. What I'm seeing from a bunch of different places here, enough that it's starting to make me think this has got to be true, it is going to feature all 156 Pokemon that first appeared in Pokemon Black and White. Pokemon card 156, if you will. Now, I am not saying that this is just a Gen 5 version of 151. But what I am saying is, everything we're hearing tells us there are going to be a lot of similarities. The fact that there are 20 packs per box, that fits in beautifully with 151. The fact that they are deliberately featuring all Pokemon that originally featured in that series, in that generation, fits along with it. And remember, when Black and White first came out, one of the real hooks of the games was that until you reached the end game, until you beat the Pokemon League, you only found new Pokemon. That was like a whole thing in Black and White. Until you beat the Elite Four, you only found new Pokemon. And it was like the first time I believe they'd done that since Gen 1, where the whole way running around the game, you were only finding new Pokemon. So if they wanted to do a new set where they really celebrated a generation and really focused on the new Pokemon, as in the Pokemon that debuted in that generation, Black and white are the obvious candidates here. Like, very much the obvious candidates. So that really does seem like where we're going here. And Gen 5 is probably my favourite generation. I think if I had to sit down and pick a generation, it's probably Gen 5. So finding out that we're getting all of this stuff here, yeah, that makes me pretty gosh darn happy. New Ducklet, sounds like a plan to me. New Excadrill, oh, I will very much take a new Excadrill. Let's not forget that Tepig, one of the greatest first partner Pokemon ever, came around in this generation. I could keep going, but you get the point here. I'm a huge Gen 5 fanboy. I love Gen 5. And if you're telling me that we're going to be getting a new card for every Pokemon in Gen 5, well, I'm going to be rather delighted. And we haven't actually had Tepig properly since Battle Styles. We had this promo that came around about Battle Styles, as well as the actual Tepig from Battle Styles. We've been waiting a little while now for a new Tepig. Well, basically an entire generation, more than, in fact. A generation and a half in the card game. Now we get ourselves a new Tepig, apparently. It's going to be awesome. Couple of other interesting points. It will contain 4 art rare cards per box, which is relevant because up until now, like every Japanese set, has been really clearly free per box. And that's in like 30 packs, well, 20 packs, I suppose, for 151. But now that means that we're going to be basically getting one every 5 packs, which is really good. That is a great hit rate for these illustration rares, these artwork rares. So yeah, that's honestly kind of brilliant. So getting 4 of these in a box sounds absolutely fantastic. They're upping the pull rates on them. And then we're told stuff like mirror version available. So think back to like the Pokeball Hollows over in 151. I'm not saying it's going to be the same thing. I don't know. They might change up the Rev Hollow pattern. But the point is there is going to be some form of reverse hollow, which again fits in perfectly with 151. It really, really feels like they are just doing a Gen 5 version of Pokemon card 151. And again, because Gen 5 was the first game since Gen 1 to really go, we are doing new Pokemon, this seems like a very obvious way to do it. Yes, I know Gen 2 is the first gen after Gen 1, but go play through Gen 2. There's a bunch of new Pokemon, but it's mixed in with all the old ones. Gen 5 makes the most sense for a set like this. And I'm telling you right now, if this is what it seems to be, if this is just a full-on Gen 5 set featuring all of the Gen 5 Pokemon and artwork rares and all of that, I am going hard on this set. Much harder than I generally do for any other set, because it sounds awesome. Worth noting, of course, that we have seen Gen 5 Pokemon like En's Reshiram, for instance, which is absolutely a thing from those owners Pokemon that we saw at the World Championships. All I can tell you right now is, hold your horses. I'm not saying we're not getting En's Reshiram and En's Zoroark in this set. I am just saying that we don't exactly know the timeline for these owners Pokemon that were shown off at Worlds. So yes, they absolutely could be in this set. But there's no reason to believe that they absolutely will. Just because they are Gen 5 Pokemon does not mean they have to be in this set. I mean, there's a decent chance that they are. But I'm saying that it's not a given. We don't know that timeline well enough. The Worlds reveal really was its own thing. Now, one last little point before we finish, and this really shouldn't need to be said. No! This doesn't mean there's Gen 5 remakes coming. Why would this mean there's Gen 5 remakes coming? And then there's so many reasons to think this is ridiculous. And I've seen a lot of people claiming this. They've got to know they're baiting. They've got to know they're doing this just to try and get clout. They can't actually believe this. I mean, firstly, 151 was not accompanied by a Gen 1 remake. But also, we know that the next game is Legend ZA. We don't have a release date for that yet. Maybe it's the beginning of the year. Maybe it gets released on or revealed again on Pokemon Day and then gets released over the summer. Maybe it's a November game. My theory is that it should have been a November game this year, but it's been delayed. But either way, that's the next game. Remember that cards in the Pokémon TCG generally tend to get released a little bit after the game for which they are, well, tying in. So like Legends Arceus went and released in January 2022, but the Japanese sets that first brought in the Hisui Pokemon, what was it called, Time Gazer and Space Juggler, they didn't come out until April. They came out after the game. This set is coming out in June. If we were getting a Gen 5 set to coincide with a Gen 5 remake, it would be coming out after the game. Which means the game would have to be launching in like February, March time. And we haven't even got Legend ZA yet. So there's no way we're getting a Gen 5 remake before that. Which means we would have to be getting a Gen 5 TCG set and then some random Gen 5 remakes releasing probably significantly after the set. Which is not the way Pokemon ever do this. When they have sets that coincide with games, they come out after the set. So, no, we're not getting Gen 5 remakes. And the people suggesting it don't actually believe that. They know they're not coming, just like I know they're not coming. We all know Gen 5 remakes are not coming. We all know this set is not hinting at Gen 5 remakes. It's just a cool Gen 5 set that actually, as I've explained in this video, makes a huge amount of sense. No, Gen 5 remakes aren't coming, and I don't think anyone saying that actually believes it. I think they're just trying to get clicks. Tie-in sets come out after the video games. We would know if there was a Gen 5 remake coming, and it would have to be releasing around February, March time. It's November, there is a game coming, it's not a Gen 5 remake. There we go. It does, however, sound like it could be my favourite set ever. And I know it's not necessarily an objective, well, it's not an objective thing. And I know that if you don't have the same Gen 5 nostalgia I do, you might not be quite my level of excited. But I think we can all agree this is a ridiculously exciting set. 151 was amazing. And no, for the general person, Gen 5 does not carry the same nostalgia and cachet as Gen 1. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be awesome. So I'm going to go replay Gen 5. But while I do that, tell me what you think about these news and tell me your favourite Gen 5 Pokemon in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Stegoraptor, who's been a supporter of ours for a while now and is a very lovely person. So shout out to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.